Bringing that good music. Yahweh International. New Foundation Production presents.
Hey, it's your bar Keys, and welcome to the Food for Thought Project. Man, this show is all about giving you food for thought, making you think deeper, think different. I tend to take stances. Sometimes I be very strong on them, but sometimes it's food for thought. I'll listen to a little bit of their opinion, listen to a little bit of their opinion, and just try to have understanding. But this topic is a tough topic, and let me tell you why I think it's so tough. First of all, from a spiritual standpoint, it means a lot because the Bible plays into it. From the second perspective, there's a lot of science involved. And sometimes the Bible and science can have conflict, but not in this case. In this case, they are pretty good partners when it comes to talking about Pangaea. Pangaea is a hot topic for a lot of reasons because based off of a lot of things, you could have issues with it. You could have issues with it as far as spiritually, nationality, whatever it may be. It just counts on who you are. But I'm somebody who has always been fascinated with it as early as I can remember hearing about it, and along with the Bible. What led me on this journey was learning about the Hata tribe, which is a tribe that Japan right now is really digging out the history. And it's a tribe that came to Japan, that traveled through the Silk Road and had a major impact on what Japan is today. Everything that Japan is today, really, the Hata tribe has a major part in that. And I won't get too deep into that today because it's pretty deep. But what I can tell you is that the Hata tribe came from with Africa and traveled up through Africa, escaping persecution. Why? Because they either were Jewish or Orthodox Jew, whatever Jewish, or most, and also which is being debated if they were followers of Christ, which is why they were fleeing being persecuted. But I won't get into that. That's a whole nother deep topic. But they made their way through the Silk Road to Japan, and which is where they settled. And a lot of things right now, Shintoism, which is part of their national religion, plays into that. It's deep. It's deep. But from that, it made me dig deeper, like different understanding of the Bible. Because look, the reality is, for Westernized Christians, there's not a Bible, there's not a lot that we haven't heard in a sermon. These sermons are recycled. I've heard the same sermon preached so many times. They kind of stick to a format that works for people who needs healing and help and prosperity. Just a very, I'm not gonna say limited, but it does what it does for the time they were in. Because there's a lot of movements in Christianity, the prosperity movement, this movement, the charismatic movement. There are all these movements that happen. But with all of that, I can definitely say, as old as I am, for the most part, I've never heard nothing that I haven't heard before. So, with that being said, only one time that I ever hear about the Tower of Babel. And there's different names for it, but it's an interesting topic, and it plays into everything we're going to talk about today. So let's just start this off bringing everybody aboard. Everybody gather around. All you Bible bullies, get your Bibles out. All you scientists, get out whatever you need to get out. And we're going to have this conversation. This is the conversation that's needed to happen across the world. And it's something that needs to get preached on, because what we're missing the opportunity to bring healing and hope to the world, to the nation, and everything. So let me just start with something very basic. How old is the earth? And I don't want to get into a big tug of war with all these scientist type of people. It could be 500 billion. I've seen that. It can be 5 billion. I'm just going to roll with, it was at 4.500. Well, how do you say that? How would you say it? My assistant is here. We're talking about it.
4.5.
4.5 billion years old. Billion years old. We're going to round out to 5. So we're going to say it's 5 billion years old. We're just going to roll with that. So from that, all my spiritual people, I know they got their Bibles ready. These Bible bullies is out here. Now we're going to just factor that in, because you can pretty much, from that scientific standpoint, you can pretty much kind of estimate when the Garden of Eden existed, because he created all that within 7 days. Am I correct? 7 days. So within that 7 days, he did a whole lot of things. Let me go to some good notes, because it's not on the top of my. We know he created the heavens and earth. We know he did that. We know that he separated the light from the darkness. We know that he, let's see here, let the waters under the sky and begin to gather them to one place and let dry grounds appear. I mean, he basically was forming the earth and everything that was going to exist within that period of time. And that's from landmass, waters, plants, everything happened within that time period, right? And separating the sky. I mean, as you read Genesis, you can really get into the little intricate details of how the earth formed. And if you just are not a believer and you just look at what scientists say of how things, well, if you're evolutionist, whatever, but just ride with me on this. So he formed all these things, right? So, of course, from that, he made man. Because I don't want to get too bogged down with the whole what God did part of it. We all know that. We know the scriptures. But what I do want to talk about is for the fact that the planet is 5 billion years old, and Adam and Eve existed in the Garden of Eden. Now, how does this play into Pangaea? Well, easy. So I want most people, if you don't know this, a lot of people think of Pangaea as being this small garden like you have in the back of your house. like this, maybe an acre of land or something like that, but you can do a little research on Garden of Eden and all the rivers that were connected to that. There's a lot of stuff within the Bible. And like I said, it will just bog down what I'm trying to get to. But the reality is Adam and Eve existed in an area where they needed nothing. They did all the best vegetation, all of everything existed there. So all of the best natural resources existed at that time, let alone if they were using it or not. That means diamond, gold, everything that God made existed in this area. It was the land of plenty. You didn't need nothing. Every kind of food, everything that you needed existed. So they say, a lot of people can bicker and argue about this, but one thing is clear. From a scientific standpoint, the first man came from Africa, period, point blank. No one even disputes that no more. And that'd be just the oldest man that's been found on record. The other point that most people make, that the Garden of Eden existed in Africa. No one even fights that. No one even fights that no more. And Iraq, so funny, comes in and out of a lot of these things of where it may existed, whatever. Don't get it all into that. But the fact is, most likely the Garden of Eden was massive. And I mean massive. And people will say, why do you think the Garden of Eden was massive? First of all, Adam and Eve had kids. And not just, there are generations upon generations upon generations who had to live within this landmass and would live within the land of plenty. And yes, Adam and Eve, the whole apple thing, and how we end up covering our bodies and all that stuff with leaves. Okay, fine. Roll with that. But don't get bogged down by that. Because you don't know how long you can't estimate, let's just say, that the time period between which Adam and Eve were created and when the apple was eaten. No one was there. Okay. And you can just say, well, no one, I don't want to get into all the crazy stuff. Just ride with me on this. This is food for thought. So you don't know if it was 5 days. We're not sure if it was 10 days, a month, a year. We don't know the time span between Adam and Eve's existence and when that apple was bitten. Okay. So we're going to it could have been millions of years. We don't know. But one thing was true. Whatever was going to happen and whatever was going to be birthed from Adam and Eve needed a lot of space. So let me give you an example why. Let's say you and your wife come together and you decide to and you live in a 1-bedroom house and you decide to have kids. What do you automatically do? You can rough it, but most likely you expand. You get another place to stay. You get a 2-bedroom because it'll get a little crowded. Now I want you to just kind of close your eyes for a minute. Imagine that you and your wife have 5 kids. Now, I'm not just talking about Adam and Eve. I'm talking about you. And you continue to stay in this 2-bed apartment until the point where your kids are now adults. So now it's you, your wife, your 5 kids in their 20s, 30s, whatever they meet, and your 5 kids have 5 kids each in this 1-bed apartment. How's that gonna work? That's not gonna work. Just like you have to plan for those kind of things. God knew what he was doing when he was making Adam and Eve. He knew he needed to make a space so big to accommodate all of the population that was gonna come out of these 2 people, right? No one's going to dispute that, because Adam and Eve didn't live in a small 1-bed apartment, and they definitely didn't live on a 1 acre of land, okay? Because the reality is the Garden of Eden was massive enough to accommodate what was about to happen. And of course, we can go through and get to those Bible verses that talk about begot this kid and that kid, and there's this whole breakdown of lineage and all this stuff. We're not gonna do all that. Just ride with me. So I'm gonna just throw it out there that I believe that the Garden of Eden was pretty much a big chunk of Africa, if not most of Middle Africa, including maybe some parts of South America like Brazil. And I'm saying that because when you pull up the Pangaea map, which you should be probably doing, pause for the cause, everybody needs to pull up the Pangaea map. I believe that Adam and Eve existed on the largest, most plentiful, most resourceful part of the planet. Why? We're going to talk about that. Now, I'm not saying that all of that was explored yet. I'm saying that this is part of how God's plan worked. And we're going to base that off of some very basic things. If you just talk about natural resources today, where's most of the diamond, a lot of the gold, a lot of the things that have been mined and stripped for the last billion years, however, not billion years, I'm just saying for a long time. And a long time to us is as long as we know biblically, or the longest history. Africa has always been that land that people went, colonized, pillaged, and took back. It didn't matter if it was the Romans or the Persians or whoever was in power at the time. It's just a fact that everybody knew where to go to get these natural resources. The diamonds and the gold and all that stuff. And that goes all the way into South America as well. So when we talk about Pangaea, I want you to understand that's how truly believe. And I want you guys to understand that God has been giving me all of this for like months, really years, but the last couple of months has really been putting it on me. And please, I'm not saying I'm a prophet or nothing like that, but when God speaks to me and really gets me to understand, he's leading me in a direction of understanding. Okay. So I have to bring everybody into the conversation, because Christians have their point, atheists have their point, and scientists, everybody have a point. So I just try to bring together all points to a point of understanding. So now we have Adam and Eve, all their generations, and whoever existed, all living during the Pangaea time, right? Now we got to remember a couple of things. All right. Let me just kind of go back here. We got the earth. We've got what God did. Okay, right. We're going to talk now about something that's even more important. So, we're going to talk about the Tower of Babel. And you can read about that in Genesis, 11:1-9. See if my assistant here is going to look that up. I'm pretty sure most biblical people know of this tower and what happened. And it's a story that is quite interesting, because I want you guys to understand something. This is a major part of the Bible that every church should be preaching on and digging out and bringing people together, because we are divided in so many different ways. We hate because of our color and this, that, and the other. And it makes no sense. It never made sense. And the Bible is going to really show you why it doesn't make any sense. Okay. So now ride with me. Okay. The Tower of Babel. First of all, we all had one language. There were no different languages. Okay. We all were one people. Okay. So the reason I'm really bringing that to you is this is Genesis 11, 1 through 9, new international. I'm looking at NIV, and it says, now the whole world had one language. Listen to that. We all spoke the same language, okay? And common speech. Now we moved eastward. And I've kind of did a little research, and they think that eastward move was more towards Iraq. Iraq plays, you guys don't understand how Iraq plays in the Bible in so many different ways, but we'll just say Iraq for now, or close to that vicinity. And they decided to build this city and you use brick instead of stone, and they just decided to just build themselves a city. And with this city, they wanted to make a tower to the heavens, right? And make a name for themselves. They fill in themselves. I feel that ego and that pride and a little bit of greed and everything that goes with it, all sorts of things that can tend to lead you the wrong direction. And because in the Bible it says, otherwise we will scatter all over the face of the earth. So there was an attempt to stay together, right? But the problem with that staying together is you can't stay together when you're using certain type of mentality. If you're egotistic, prideful, greedy, all these other kind of behaviors that tend to tear people apart. So initially they might have been on the same page, but as they're pursuing to make this tower, and there's a conflict, and the conflict is between man and God. Because the Lord came down to this city and tower and looked what the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language, they begun to do this. So he's recognizing that all of you guys as one language are building this tower. Then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. That was interesting, because it's a little nugget in that. Right? A little bitty thing, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Basically saying that if you all come together, that nothing's impossible. Now you think that's a good thing, and that is a good thing to take from that. But now let us come down and let us go down and confuse their language so they cannot understand each other. Like what? Like, why would God come down, confuse their language so they cannot understand each other? And not only that, then the Lord scattered them from all over the earth, and they stopped building a city. That's why it's called Babel. And that's why when you hear babies talking, they say, oh, he's just babbling. Or you can't understand the word, they're just babbling. That's not by coincidence. That's all within God's plan. And there's so much in this scripture that every church can dig out and understand. Understanding number one, you want to start really dealing with racism? Easy. We're all same people. We're all the same people. We all spoke the same language, right? And here's another thing we're going to talk about tonight. If we're all same people, we all spoke the same language, we all lived in the same area, we all are from Africa, every last one of us. People are like, oh, white people ain't from Africa, blah, 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 blah. Seriously, people go stupid with this, and I'm going to help everybody understand something, okay? I'm going to help all you small-minded people. Yes, we all are rooted in Africa. We were all one tribe, maybe one big tribe with little spin-off tribes, but we were all one people on the same page, and we basically all came from Adam and Eve. If you're not a believer, however you want to spin that, let's say you're not a believer and you're atheist and you are a descendant of a monkey or you crawled out the ocean. Okay, fine. Let's roll with that. But now all of you guys are existing. All of you non-Christian people or whatever religion, you're non-religious people are all still existing in the same place, because most atheists are very science-minded. So you're still existing in the same place under the same circumstances. You're still growing. You're still populating in an area that is getting too crowded, and you still are going to spread out. So no matter what you do or where you play it, everybody in whatever situation is still living in the same experience. Christians are still having the same experience as your evolutionist people. It's just how we get there in the beginning is a little different, but us existing in the same place and time is exactly the same. All right, now ride with me. So God changed our language, and spread us throughout and just spread us out. Didn't clarify where we went, but I'm going to help people right here. First of all, let me just say something. I've had to deal with this, and I've talked to my assistant. Well, she's not my assistant. Stella. How you doing, Stella?
Hey.
How you doing? She's going to start speaking, but her British accent is way too strong right now. She got to work on that. You got to be like these other Britons and learn how to speak proper English. Look at me, I'm hating on her language right now. And look, I'm hating on your language, and look what I'm about to say. Every time you hate on somebody who speaks another language, Spanish, whatever it may be, you're hating on God's plan. Ooh, what did he say? What did Archie just say? I'll say it again. Every time you hate on somebody speaking another language, you're hating on God's plan. Well, how's that, Archie? Well, okay, who changed the language? God did. That's all you need to know. It's his plan. He did it, and it was what it was. So their goal is to understand why he changed their language. And we're going to get into that down the road. But he changed our language. He spread us out. Now, look, when I say spread us out, I want you to look at the Pangaea map real quick. If you don't have it up, you need to get it. So if we were all in Africa, I'm not talking like he spread us all throughout the planet. It wasn't like that initially. I don't believe that's kind of what happened. I do believe that help me with that word. Significance. You can't even say, yeah, that word. I jack that word up all the time. So he spread us out enough to where we didn't have connection. And that's a pretty big spread. So now I want you to understand something. Listen to what I'm saying. If we all came from Africa, we most all likely had color. Please don't deny this. Please take what I'm saying and don't take it from a racist standpoint. We all come from Africa. We all are people of color. Red, yellow, black, and white, precious in the sight. I do not believe, for a couple of reasons, that your tone that you have now is the tone that we were with. Clearly, that's not even hard to believe. And let me explain to you why. I lived in Alaska for 19 years. I came from Texas to Alaska. Now imagine that for 19 years, that every summer I might have got 3 to 4 months of sun. And that sun was weak. That Alaska sun was so weak. I can't even tell you. It's like, I wish there was words. Like, we thought 80 degrees was like a heat wave. That's 80 degrees of crisp, clean air and no suntans. It took a lot to keep a tan in Alaska. Now, you got to understand what I'm telling you. But serious winter, and in some places in Alaska, you can go a full year with no sun at all. So when I first moved to California, do you know that no one thought I was black? Like, I was working and people are like, hey, what race are you? I'm like, I'm black. I'm like, are you mixed like black? Like, of course, I'm mixing a lot of different stuff, but not the way they were talking, like half black, half white. Like, nah, I'm black. Ah, man, you don't look black. I'm like, no, I am. Were you Puerto Rican or Dominican or something like that? No, like, I was so paranoid about my blackness. I worked at Hilltop Mall. I used to go in the back of the mall and lay out every lunch break to get darker. That's how ridiculously light I was, right? Now, I say that to say this, to bring everybody into the fold. If you've done any traveling, if you've been to cold climate, hot climate, there is something that's very significant about who lives where. If you look in the hottest regions of Africa, South America, first of all, let me just clarify something to everybody. There is indigenous people all across the planet. It doesn't matter if it's the Philippines. Man, I've learned so much about indigenous people. See, I had, once a door opens, I have to walk through it, and then there's puzzle pieces. I have to pick them up and put them together and have understanding so I can have this conversation. Almost every race, Chinese, Philippines, Native American, whatever it may be, there's indigenous people, Australia, wherever, and they all have dark complexion. All of them. Every last one of them. Why? It's because what we're talking about right now. Indigenous people we call first people. That means first people because these people were here wherever you are before you were there, right? That means they're people, their roots, everything about them. Doesn't matter if they're Native Americans, whatever it may be. So when we talk about Pangaea, I want you to listen, right? Because they were saying they were spreading east before they made the tower. They were spreading east and then they made the tower somewhere near Iraq, whatever it may be, yada, yada, yada. But now God came down and did what he did. And he spread us out, took our language and he spread us out, right? Some people will take that as a punishment for being prideful and egotistical and whatever it may be, because it says a part in here where, so we can make a name for ourselves, be important. Like, look at us. But that's not how God rolls. It's not about your ego, your pride, your money, your wealth, and all that stuff. It's just not that kind of party. So in your mind, you're thinking it was a punishment. As I've learned the Bible a little bit more, traveled a little bit more, I don't think it was a punishment. I think God changed our language and scattered us throughout the world for a bigger purpose. First of all, I think the number one reason he did it is because who was fueling men at the time to do the things they were doing? First of all, let's all be clear and catch this. Spiritual warfare is real. And the devil's plan is always in play. There's God's plan and there's the devil's plan. So every move you make, every thought you take, you have to kind of always ask yourself, where is this coming from? Who's fueling it? Is it God fueling it, or is it the devil fueling it? Is it my flesh fueling it? Because your flesh is in the middle of this tug of war. Your spirit is right there with it, right? So what I believe happened was, yes, the people moved, wanted to make this city, wanted to exist and have a good life. But somewhere in there, when you start talking about making a name for yourselves and your ego and your pride comes in, those are not godly things. Just anytime you step away from being humble, down to earth, empathy, and all the things that God is powerful of, then that means everything else other than that, the devil uses that to manipulate you. I believe that during that period of time, Satan was not happy with what he was seeing. Everybody coming together. Just think about that. Who would be that would not make him happy. Imagine tomorrow in America that all people were not racist, bigots, and all of the things that divide us, and that we all decide to come together. Who benefits from that? Right? I'm just saying. Because we know what the devil's been doing for a long time in America. Because hate and racism and bigotry, that's a demonic tool. That's all in God and Satan's plan. That's all. That's one of his favorite weapons. It is his favorite weapon. He's done more damage with hate than anything else. Because it's like a virus, like a parasite, and you spread it. Don't even get me started. I cannot go into that right now. So I want to just get back on focus. I don't want to. So listen. So I do believe that he was on his, just like he manipulated Eve and Adam, he's always doing his thing. Even when this tower was getting built. Hey, why don't you guys build this tower to the heavens? That'd be great. You can be important. Yeah, he's working his plan, and God came down, saying, oh, you think that he separated us and changed our language because it was punishment. I believe it's because he wanted to prove a point that we are bigger, better, greater, stronger, and that if we seek God, it will always come back together. That's the real reason. I think that's the real point. Okay, Satan, you did a little bit of something. You did something. Okay. But I don't believe that is the destiny of my people that I created. They're bigger, they're better, they're stronger than that. And I'm gonna prove a point. Because God, sometimes he lets things happen, and sometimes he does things, and things happen. Change our language, spread us out. And the whole goal and purpose is that when we come back together, or when we see each other again, or when we have interactions, to show the true spirit of God. And not everybody does that. When I went to Japan for the first time, how do I say this? I was awed. I was so undone because only thing I knew about Japan was from media and movies. And I was so wrong. I wasn't even close. There were some nuances of just your stereotypical stuff, but I wasn't even in the universe of what Japan was really about. Yamato Damashi, I had no idea what the spirit of God's people was like over there. But going there changed everything. I got to see truly how God is amazing. Some of you people have gone to other countries and you've experienced a lot of things in different cultures, but that's why we got to travel. You got to see what God is really doing in other places. And don't be looking like, oh, they're not Christian. Don't even look at it like that. If you go to the middle of South Africa, not South Africa, let me just say South America, and you watch how some of the native tribes, they don't have medicine the way we have it, but how they heal things, how they do things, that is amazing. While you up here relying on Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so, they grabbing plants, roots, and things that God made, and they're healing things. It's amazing. So when I think of when God changed our language and spread us out throughout the earth, it had more to do of making a point to us as people that if we turn to God, if we trust and believe God, if we focus on God and we stop letting the devil play us, manipulate us, lie to us, kill us, steal us, and all the other stuff, if we do what we know we're supposed to be doing, that it will bring us all back together when we were one. We stop looking at color and language. It will bring us all back together when we were one people. For all you believers who are bigots, you racist, and you hate, for you little racist, like some people, like maybe me, when I'm driving, I see maybe some Asian person driving and I'm like, oh, these Asians can't drive, or Mexicans this. That little racism feeds big racism. Every day you have to battle hate. You have to battle racism because listen to me, it is Satan's number one tool. It's what he uses to most. He knows exactly what to do to make sure that we do not fulfill God's plan. So even the little stuff within black culture, hating on light skin, using slavery. Let me help you guys out. Oh, I hate to say this. We're mad about 400 years of slavery. But you got to understand something. Let's just go back to 5,000 years of whatever it is. Africans ruled the planet not for hundreds, thousands, 100,000, 200,000, ruled the planet for millions of billions of years. Do you understand what I'm saying? How old is the earth? God made the earth in 7 days. He made Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve existed in Africa. All tribes, everybody came from Adam and Eve. Okay, if all tribes and everybody came from Adam and Eve in Africa, which is a hot climate, and I mean hot, what color do we look like? Black people, please don't take credit because all tribes existed during this period. We are all tribes of color, right? So we've been ruling for millions of years. And now I'm going to help everybody understand how things got to where they are. I'm going to try to do it in a short little span of getting people on board. So now we've talked about, let me see, I'm just going to go through my notes here. Okay. I need to get to that. Ooh, this topic is so big. I can't even just do it all. So let me see how much time I have. Okay, we had 33 minutes. I'm loving this show. I'm loving it. So I'm going to blow your minds right now. So we can all agree on a good chunk. And if not agree, it's food for thought. So God came. He did what he did, created the earth. I'm getting everybody up to speed. This is during the Pangaea period when all the continents were connected. There wasn't no United States and all these separation going on. We haven't even had some of the major there's 5 extinction events. And I won't get too much into pinpointing all of them, but just ride with me on it because some of them you do know. So he comes and he separates us. Now, during this period of time, Pangaea I truly believe, still was one continent. Because here's why. Okay, listen to what I'm telling you guys right now. Pull up my picture. Because if you look at the connection of people, let me give you an example. When I lived in Alaska, there are Native Americans, there's Eskimos, Aleuts, there's a lot of tribes in Alaska, right? But when I grew up in Alaska, most Alaskans knew that there were Eskimos on the east side of Russia, which is, the east side of Russia? On the west side of Russia and on the east side of Alaska. But during the Cold War, of course, Russia and America wasn't cool. They wasn't talking, right? But there was always a notion that the Eskimos that existed on the west side of Upper Russia and the Eskimos or Aleuts or whatever tribe that is that existed on the east side of Alaska were same people. So what they did was I don't even know what year that was. They took a blood test. Guess what? Same people, same tribe, same blood, same DNA, all that stuff, right? People are like, how the heck is that? Because if you know history, everybody knows this. It's not rocket science. If you know anything about Alaskan history, there was this thing called the ice bridge. Okay, when the Earth and we didn't screw it all up and weather was what it was, you could travel through. You could from Russia to America. You could walk straight across and hunt, fish, and do all that stuff. And which is what the Native Americans were doing at that time, right? It's just you could walk a lot of the planet, and it might take a little time. So various tribes, but whatever it was, Asians from China basically crossed. And as there are a lot of tribes, people, listen to me. I want you guys to get this. You think of China as China, but just don't think of it that way. Think of it just a landmass with a lot of tribes traveling and moving amongst the planet, right? So I want you to look at your Pangaea map and understand, like, that's just what it was, you know? So, but here's what I think. Listen to what I'm saying. Because as a matter of fact, I don't want to get you confused to talk about that ice bridge, because that is that ice bridge existed after some major extinction events in the world. So now God did his thing. We're coming back to everybody spreading out. Now, when I say spreading out, this is what I'm talking about. The landmass was one major continent surrounded by water. It had not been separated yet. So when God separated us out, when I say traveling, it didn't take 50 years, 100 years, 1,000. It didn't take 50,000. It didn't take all of this time that you are thinking, because you're thinking too small. If the planet is billions of years old, it takes millions of years for people to travel by walking. And you got to remember something else. When they talk about beasts that existed during the time, I think in the Bible, I'm not sure where that part is, dinosaurs existed. They were just when it said there was light and there was dark, there were parts of the planet that was so disconnected from Eden. Like, they were just so these things existed. Just don't get all crazy with the science. It's just the reality is, just like there are a lot of things that don't exist today that might have existed 500 years ago. These things were walking around. Everything else was different. Not the way, there were not cows, chickens, the way you think of it, you know, but the reality is, this is the thing that evolutionists people get into and all that, but I don't want to get into that. I do believe it. Dinosaurs existed. I believe they died off during extinction. I think whoever survived had to learn how to survive, just like we had to learn how to survive, and things happen. So now let me get back to it. So let me see what she says. Oh yeah. So, okay. So we can be completely sure that what does that say? God described this grassy eating creature as a gigantic, incredible, strong, and having a tree-like tail. Job 4:40, 15 through 19. This is all in the Bible. Listen, people, everything that you've ever heard about history is already in the Bible. You don't even have to look. She's just sitting here as we're talking, because I try not to get bogged down by a lot of stuff, but a lot of this stuff is already in there. It's just people fight about the evolution stuff. Forget that. Skip that, because I can completely get rid of that. We don't have to fight over it. We can just all agree on one thing, that we all existed in Africa at the same time. So now we're all spreading out. I believe that it took millions of years to basically really populate this planet, and from nothing to something. So when you look at where most dark-skinned natives exist, primarily in Africa and throughout Northern America, all throughout South America. So first people existed pretty much still in the primary promise of God during just where all the land of plenty was. So if you look at Pangaea, if you look at Africa, Brazil, Peru, all of South America, all of North America, all warm climate. Listen to me, all warm climate, where if you go to today, it's hot as all get up, where you can go in vacation in the wintertime and it's still tropical. There are places that don't even get snow. But if you look at Pangaea, it makes total sense that for millions of years, we were exposed to very hot climate. What you showing me? Oh, which one? Which verse is it? And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kindness. Yes. Livestock and creatures, creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kind. Yes. That's a better one. See, that's why you gotta have an assistant, because sometimes you just start talking and you want to get all like Bible bullied up. That's what a Bible bully would do. But I appreciate you bullying me because that's it, because he's just basically acknowledging what I'm saying. Beast of all kind. So now the earth has been populated really between Africa, South America, and all of South America, all of North America are full of people, right? Why? It's the warmest, most survivable climate with most resources, okay? Now, that means the land of plenty. Just everything you need. If you go to any of these places right now, is it not the land of plenty? Before we've completely colonized and just think about before we've totally started jacking the earth up, before cars and technology, when land was land, when we wasn't stripping the earth for resources. Man, this place was amazing. So now you have all of God's people, all people that came out of Africa populating the warmest parts of the planet. Because who wants to be cold? Well, first of all, as somebody who lived in Alaska for 19 years, I can tell you right now, there was no fun in it. There was skiing, but the brothers don't ski. Well, we do now. But in general, cold climate is not conducive to good living. Why? Because habitat, vegetation, cold climate kills a lot of stuff, including people. So now we're all existing, various tribes of people. We don't speak the same language, but we're all existing in some kind of form of the land of plenty, because everything is resourceful, everything, all coming from one tribe of people, but now have kind of been scattered out speaking different language. Now check this out. How did all the different languages start looking so different? How's that possible? Easy, it's not even complicated. It's the same way I told you. How did I go from being a dark-skinned black kid from Lubbock, Texas, to looking like a Dominican from Alaska? When you live in certain type of climates, it is absolutely going to affect the way you look. And if you eat certain kind of foods that exist in that climate, in that environment, it's going to affect you. are what you eat. If you live in a cold climate with less sun, you're not going to have a lot of color. This is not even rocket science. So now listen to me. Here's where people tend to be afraid to talk about Pangaea, because there is a lot of history within every culture about tribal warfare. And I can't get into it. It's too big. It's too in-depth. We can talk about current stuff. We can talk about past stuff. But the fact is that at some point in time, some tribes were getting pushed out. And when I say pushed out, farther out. So, and why? We can talk about various reasons why various tribes had to move. So they either had to move because of overpopulation, tribal warfare, resources, famine, whatever. I won't say famine because we were living pretty good back then. But, and it's also for the fact that people, listen to me, the earth was completely different back then. You know, there are a lot of things that hadn't happened. So the way things look now is not the way it looked back then. Now, let me help everybody with extinction. Now, I don't even want to get to that yet. I want to keep Pangaea as a whole for right now. So I don't want to confuse everybody. Because during Pangaea, you can pretty much travel freely anywhere you wanted to go. There was nothing prohibiting you from doing it. There was no major oceans. There was none of these things. You can go from Africa to Brazil, Brazil to North America to Canada if you want to, Canada from Alaska. But I don't even have to say that because it gets too, I don't want to confuse you about that travel when it comes to the northern parts of certain parts, because between the floods and some other things, when the planet started separating, it'll make more sense. So now everybody's where they are. Most indigenous people from Africa spread the planet, and then we're all over the planet. As we know, when we look at Australia and we look at their indigenous people, there's a reason why everybody looks the same. When you go to South America, just everybody is all the same people, but a different tribe. And those different tribes may look various kind of ways based off of where they were living, based off of the sun, the cold, everything that they were dealing with, based off the food they were eating. The food you eat in Africa may not be the food you eat in Mexico. There are some similarities, but that stuff makes a difference. If you're eating all protein-based food, if you're eating all carb-based food, if you're eating all vegetables, if you're a vegetarian right now and you don't eat no protein for 10 years, I wonder what you're gonna look like. As somebody sitting next to me is a vegetarian, She would say, if you become a vegetarian, you're going to lose what? You're going to lose a lot of weight. It's true, So there's this message is so big. It should make you want to learn about other people's cultures, because if you listen to what I'm saying, it'll blow your mind, because it's like right in your face. It's right in the Bible, not even hidden. No one even preaches on this stuff. And they don't preach on it because the impact it makes. If you're a church full of white people and you start reading if you read these books about Pangaea, I'm sorry. If you're a all black church or all white church and you're just talking about Babel and you start preaching and building a sermon around that, or how we are all one people, one language, how's that going to look for your all black church? How's it going to look for your all white church? It's not going to make any sense. You're going to have to really start. Then it starts really getting at you why you have an all black church, why you have an all white church. Trust me, God is good. He has little bitty nuggets. He has the keys to every solution that plagues the church. But the church stays away from a lot of verses and a lot of books that can bring everybody together, because man-made church, the way we have church today, is it fits their needs and not God's needs. We're very, like I said, you can go to church. You've been going to church for a long time. When last time you heard a sermon that you had never heard before? Don't even get me started on it. So now, I got everybody on board with me. Everybody knows the Pangaea. Now I want to help everybody understand something, right? Now, 5 great extinction events. And we are coming up to the end of the show. I didn't get to play any music because this is so good. 5 great events. I don't even need to talk about those. I can just talk about 2. The one that you know about in the Bible, which is the flood, okay? And the other one is this massive, continuous shifting of the plates on this planet, the earth, earthquakes and floods. There wasn't just one flood here, one flood there. Let's just say the Bible said the whole earth was covered. Now, as somebody who lived here in Houston during the flood, that is astounding to me. I know the devastating that that flood here we had was absolutely devastating. Now I want you to imagine the whole earth is covered. The whole entire planet was covered. Ooh. I want you to understand, living in California and Alaska, dealing with earthquakes, seeing major gaps in the road and shifting and just things completely destroyed because the ground won't stop shaking. But now you have to understand something. During the time of Earth, in the beginning and everything after that, the level of earthquakes and floods and tsunamis and other weather events were a regular occurrence. It was the planet was in flux. So we were safe where we're at because Pangaea was one whole planet. One whole continent. But listen, something so incredible happened. Let alone if it was the flood or a combination of various things. But the continent known as Pangaea started to break up. You can take a map right now and push everything back together and you'll totally see like, oh my God. It'll blow you away. You can see exactly where everything existed. It's not even rocket science. You don't have to you don't have to have a PhD to get this. This is just basic common sense. But at some point, no matter how many years it took a long time for the planet to get to where it is now, where the continents are separated. There's multiple oceans and rivers and all these things. But now the problem is we can't just walk where we want to walk. So if you live, let me pull my map up. So if you lived in South America, you're no longer connected to Africa. If you lived in North America, you are no longer connected to Africa and other places. If you lived in India, you're no longer connected. In Australia, you're no longer connected. You could just walk to these places. It was nothing. So as population and all various other things caused God's intervention, separated us and made us spread out, now this catastrophic event separated us. And now we can't just walk to each other. We can't have these interactions. And now we're wherever we are, that's where we are. Now I want to just get everybody to understand that. Understand before colonization, understand before the Persians took over and the Greeks took over and every other culture ever took over. Those are all just tribes. We're calling them these names, but they were just tribes. All these tribes have all been in charge at some point in time. African tribes have been in charge and when I say African tribes, the tribes that were pretty much in Africa for most of the time. We all know about Shaka Zulu and all these other tribes, but you have to think longer than that. You have to think bigger than that. Don't think in that time frame because the earth is too old. So now we're all separated. For whatever reasons, we don't have the connection that we have. We're already speaking a different language. God already spread us. All these natural events, catastrophic events, extinction events, all these things has completely made us not attainable. But I do believe this is what happened that really made people spread out. And we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about that on part 2. We're talking about Pangaea, because this is the part that really makes people so, what's the word? You're not going to like it because you're not going to like what it means to culture, your culture, my culture, how people got where they are. And there's some very basic things. There's some very basic things that could have caused people to be where they are. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next show, because I want you to have empathy for all cultures. And I'm going to leave y'all with this. If you live on an island, and on an island is all the food you need, and you live in a tropical island, let's say you live in the Bahamas, where the weather is perfect other than just what we recently had, but it's full of animals. You live in Fiji, it's full of animals, full of fruit, and the sun all the time. Okay, what kind of clothes you think you're gonna be wearing? Adam and Eve were putting on leaves. And that's what the Bible said. They just kind of covered up with some foliage. I'm correct. They didn't sew nothing together. If you live in a hot climate, how many times have you seen things about Africa and they still don't wear clothes? It's hot. And then it's funny, you go up north someplace and then they got to be fully clothed. They need a lot of things to stay warm. This is important to talk about culture and about who we are today, how we got there. This is Art Keese and the Food for Thought. Man, I want to thank my sponsors. I know I'm just going because I'm passionate about this one, but Yahweh International, New Foundation Productions, you guys need to really support them right now because they're doing a lot of outreach. Go to their website and support and donate to their outreach as far as the homeless and reaching out to the juvenile facilities. And we appreciate everything you guys have done. This is Art Keese and the Food for Thought Project. I'm out. Part 2 will be coming in about 2 weeks. So take a little time. Read up on Pangaea. Read your Bible, read Genesis nice and good and get a good understanding. You're going to be like tripping about, oh my gosh, he talked about, like there's stuff I didn't even talk about this in Genesis that'll blow you away. Then read about the 5 extinction events, learn about other cultures. We're all connected. Like I said, we're all one people. There's a reason why God made us the way he made us. And it's beautiful, but you can't find it being the way you are if you racist, bigot, and you hate, and you embrace demonic principles, and you play into Satan's plan because you're so thin-minded and so small-minded, you can't even tell you're being manipulated. So I'm encouraging you just to take a little time to just do a little history and get to know the truth about this planet and who we are and what's our role in it. It's not complicated. It's your boy Art Keese, Yahweh International Foundation Productions, and continue to support and donate to all their causes. And we're gonna do a whole show on that, just talking about Yahweh and New Foundation Productions. Maybe not a whole show, but enough to where you can really get to know them and start donating to their causes. All right, it's your boy Art Keese, Food for Thought Project. I'm out.
The Son of God enfold you with the Spirit and His love. Let Him fill your heart and satisfy your soul.